War overseas left homes in America racked with fear. Families feared the death or injury of a son or daughter in uniform. Wives feared for the safety of their husbands, and friends feared for the welfare of relatives living in occupied lands. What lifted everyone's spirits, however, was mail. One who constantly wrote to her husband was Mrs. Dorothy Pietro. Matt Pietro was an engineer gunner in the 387th Bomb Group of the 9th Air Force based in England. Dorothy was representative of millions of wives that did what they could to sustain their husbands' morale. What she received in return were moving letters that stirred the heart. Having survived the war and 38 combat air missions over Europe, Matt passed away in 1999. Dorothy searched out his wartime correspondence and is here to share with us Matt's sentiments.
What was his job? He was in the Army Air Corps?
He was in the Army Air Corps, and he was an engineer, gunner engineer. He had worked at Newark Airport and had good training at Casey Jones School of Aeronautics in Newark before he ever went into the service. So he knew a lot about the aircraft. Of course, he had special training at Brookdale for the B-26 to be a mechanic on that plane and to know about it. But his crew always had a great deal of faith in him because they knew he had special training before he ever entered the service.
How did you survive with him gone and almost being a single mom? You had to do everything yourself. You were still a kid yourself.
Well, I went back to live with my parents. You know, they were in town, and I stayed there until the baby was 6 months old, and then I made my reservation. I didn't think my husband could stay away much longer. Of course, everybody thought that these Americans and the Allies were going to take the Germans out a lot sooner than they did, so I wanted to be in New York. When I thought he would come back to this port, he would be back here first rather than come down south. So I made my reservations 3 months in advance, and when the day came, it was April the 13th, I believe. It was a Friday. My father was afraid that flying on Friday the 13th was a bad omen, so he was worried. But I only flew from Shreveport to Atlanta, Georgia, when I was put off the plane.
You and the baby,
With
right?
the baby, and the bottles, and the diapers. Where was Ralph Nader then? I needed him.
And tell why you were put off the plane.
I was put off the plane because Franklin Roosevelt had died, and all the big congressmen and important people were flying to Washington, and they wanted my seat. And they put me off with a 6-month-old baby. And
the wife of a serviceman.
I was bumped. I didn't even know the word bumped at that time, but I was put off, and I was put into a motel room with a small baby, and pretty frightened because at that point I was 17 years old. And I looked to the airlines. I said, what am I going to do? His whole family's waiting for me and to see their new grandchild, their first grandchild. And I said, you'll have to call them, because what could I do? I was defenseless. I always thought it was a terrible thing to do, and I can't believe they would do that today. But they were very kind. They got me back on the flight the next morning and tried to get in touch with my family, my husband's family. And I stayed with his family then with the baby. They were all rejoiced to see the baby, his first grandchild. And I stayed there until he came home. And
How long?
She was a little over a year old when he came home, and saw her for the first time.
Could you talk about the painting that Matt did of his plane?
Matt made this painting from, I think it was from a pretty famous photograph that was taken while he was overseas, but he made this, I guess, maybe 25 years after he came home, but it was a part of his memories as he could recall how it looked when the bombs were dropping and how the ground looked through the clouds, how the roads looked, and so forth. And
it sounds like he was gifted at
he
writing.
made model airplanes. That was his forte in the years when he was growing up. He always made model airplanes. Most of the pictures in our family album, you'll see him with model airplanes. And at home in my basement, I still have model airplanes everywhere. And of course, they're falling apart now after maybe 60, 70 years.
You have another letter, Dorothy, that you brought. Matt wrote to you from overseas.
I had asked him many times to tell me about whatever he could tell me, and I had asked him, I believe I told you how I came over and where I was stationed in my last letter. It's funny sometimes to see that we are thinking of the same things at the same time. I wrote in my last letter about where I was stationed while I was here, and in your very next letter you asked me to tell you about where I was stationed. I came over on the SS Franconia, which was run by the British government. It was at one time a German ship which was captured by the British. We docked in Liverpool harbor, and a short time after that, when we left her, she was torpedoed and sunk by a German sub in Liverpool. We were stationed at Stone, England for about a month. That's where I pulled KP and latrine orderly so much. We flew over to France then in a B-24 bomber. Say hello to my folks. I love you. Love always. Matt.
Do you want to talk about this day?
That was the first morning that we went out in the side of his parents' house in Irvington. He was born in Newark but lived most of his life in Irvington, and that's his first day home. Both he and his daughter were both shy about seeing each other, and that picture was captured exactly as I remember it.
Your husband was a true hero, a true veteran. He did a great service for our country, and you've done a great service by bringing it here today.
Okay.
And reading the letters for us. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about Matt, or your time together, or anything?
Just that I was very proud of him.